This is CBN NewsWatch.
And thank you so much for joining us for this first edition of CBN NewsWatch for Friday, June 21st. I'm Ephraim Graham. Ahead today, the latest on the possibility of a retaliatory strike against Iran for striking down a U.S. surveillance drone. A major ruling when it comes to federal funding for abortions, helping fill the gap when it comes to doctors in some of the nation's rural areas. And the toys take over movie theaters this weekend. All those stories and much more ahead in this first edition of CBN NewsWatch. We want to begin this hour, though, with America's tense standoff with Iran. Sources say President Donald Trump approved retaliatory airstrikes against Iran for shooting down a U.S. surveillance drone, but then called them off. The New York Times reports it's not clear if the president just changed his mind or if the administration put a stop to the strikes because of logistics or strategy. The newspaper also reports it's not clear if the attacks could still happen. President Trump called congressional leaders to the Situation Room for an emergency briefing on the situation late Thursday. Lawmakers are split on what the next move, though, should be.
We're worried that he and the administration may bumble into a war.
The only way Iran changes its behavior is if they believe America will put options on the table that would create pain for the regime.
The Federal Aviation Administration has stopped U.S. commercial air traffic from flying over Iran because of safety concerns. That affects flights over the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. The ban is still in effect until further notice. CBN News reporter Mark Martin is following this story for us and joins us now with more on the situation in Iran. So, Mark, what is President Trump saying publicly about all of this?
Well, publicly, Ephraim, President Trump is saying that Iran made a very big mistake, and he's saying that he is not being pressured into making a military strike or calling for that. He says, in fact, it's just the opposite.
Any word from the Pentagon?
Yes, good question. The Pentagon is saying that this is an unprovoked attack on a U.S. surveillance asset that has not violated Iranian airspace at any time during its mission. Now, the attack is an attempt, the Pentagon also says, to disrupt our ability to monitor the area following recent threats to international shipping and the free flow of commerce.
So what's Iran's response been in all of this?
Well, Iran is saying, first of all, that the drone was in their airspace. And then also the ambassador for Iran to the UN tells NPR that it tried to contact the drone, but, quote, since it was a spy drone, that there was nothing left to do but to shoot it down.
All right. Tense situations unfolding there. Thank you so much for your reporting, Mark.
Sure.
A new trade deal between the U.S., Canada, and Mexico is closer to reality after a meeting between President Donald Trump and Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. That happened on Thursday. They met in the Oval Office to discuss the United States-Mexico-Canada Trade Agreement, or USMCA. It would replace the 25-year-old North America Free Trade Agreement. Earlier this year, President Donald Trump removed U.S. steel and aluminum tariffs on Canada and Mexico, clearing a roadblock to a North American trade deal. It is reported Canada is now waiting for the trade deal to move through the U.S. Congress before taking it up in the House of Commons.
What's the holdup on Capitol Hill?
What is the holdup on Capitol Hill? That's a great question. There's almost no doubt that there would be plenty of votes in the Senate to ratify this. The problem is in the House of Representatives, and as you know, that is now ruled by Nancy Pelosi.
President Trump says he believes Nancy Pelosi and the House will approve the deal because it is good for U.S. farmers and manufacturers. Rules that would stop clinics from receiving federal funding if they share office space with abortion providers stays in place for now. The Ninth Circuit Federal Court of Appeals made the decision over the Trump administration rules while it considers multiple lawsuits against it. Although this could be temporary, pro-life groups say it is a victory. The Alliance Defending Freedom calling it, quote, another step toward ensuring greater government program integrity and the protection of every human life, no matter how vulnerable. Planned Parenthood called it unethical, illegal, and harmful to public health. The president of the nation's largest abortion providers went on to say Planned Parenthood will not let the government censor our doctors and nurses from informing patients where and how they can access health care. A major religious liberty victory after a Supreme Court ruling regarding a memorial cross not far from the nation's capital. CBN's Abigail Robertson has more on the ruling and the reaction.
The Supreme Court issued a big win for religious liberty, ruling 7-2 that the Bladensburg Memorial can stand, a 40-foot cross honoring 49 men from the area lost in World War I.
The Supreme Court has sided with reality and sensibility.
The legal showdown started when the American Humanist Association challenged that the cross, sitting on public land, violated the separation of church and state.
When I heard they wanted to take it down, it struck at my heart. It was terrible.
The memorial is in the shape of a cross to mark most graves of the war's fallen across Europe.
There's going to be a presumptive constitutionality for these religious symbols and monuments and memorials and practices across our country. That's a sea change.
Kelly Shackelford, chief counsel for the First Liberty Institute, says the legal precedent in the case of the cross was flawed.
They said that everything's changing. This 50-year-old precedent, this Lemon case, where separation of church and state, and all these concepts that are not in the words of the Constitution were brought up, and that led to a lot of hostility by the government to religion. They said, and look, in these cases, Lemon is not going to be applied anymore.
At stake in the Peace Cross ruling was this dire scenario.
If this memorial is able to be destroyed, that means that bulldozer is going to turn from Bladensburg and roll across the river over to Arlington National Cemetery, where it'll start knocking down the Argonne Cross, the Canadian Cross of Sacrifice, and may even make its way down to Teddy and Bobby Kennedy's graves, which themselves have grave markers in the shape of a cross.
Shackelford claims the Lemon v. Kurtzman case of 1971 has been used to attack nativity scenes, veterans' memorials, menorahs, and Ten Commandments monuments.
So what's happening now is we're going back to the Constitution, which is favorable to religious freedom.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg, one of two justices who dissented, argues when a cross is on public property, the government may be presumed to endorse its religious content.
The founders would be shocked by that idea. We are religious people with a religious heritage. There's a Moses holding the Ten Commandments in the Supreme Court.
First Liberty is also celebrating the High Court throwing out an Oregon court's ruling against their clients who refused to bake a cake for a same-sex wedding. Reporting from the Supreme Court, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
Coming up, how a program in one California county could make a difference nationwide when it comes to health care for rural America.
Introducing the CBN Bible from CBN.com. Now, an easier way to study the Bible and grow in your faith. Highlight your favorite verse. Read separate versions at a glance. Click and read a commentary. Or cross-reference your favorite verse using the Strong's Concordance. All the right tools to study the Bible, all in one place. The CBN Bible, available at cbn.com/Bible or the iTunes App Store.
It has the power to influence weight loss, boost your immune system, and improve brain function.
We've seen an explosion of data on the role of the gut microbiome in health.
The free Build a Better Gut booklet reveals the latest information about the gut microbiome. You'll discover how your gut affects the rest of your health.
The gut microbiome has been linked to depression and cancer and heart disease.
Learn how to build a stronger, healthier gut.
The microbiome, if it's in good composition, are really protecting us all the time from more invasive things.
Get the Build a Better Gut booklet, free from the Christian Broadcasting Network. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com/buildabettergut.
You need to make sure that your microbes are working with you, not against you.
And if you order online, you'll get immediate access to the Build a Better Gut series, a digital copy of the booklet, and related bonus material. Build a Better Gut today. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com/buildabettergut for your free copy.
Here, we're committed to a heritage of rigorous scholarship dating back over 1,000 years.
And to a faith tradition dating back 1,000 more.
This is how we create a culture of inquiry where no topic is off limits.
And a culture of hope.
Anything's possible!
It's Christian leadership.
And it's changing the world for the better.
It's higher learning.
It's greater knowing.
It's what makes us whole.
It's what makes us Regent.
There's a shortage of doctors in rural America. One California county is doing something about it. As our Lori Johnson reports, it's an idea that could be a model for the entire country.
Compared to patients in big cities, a diagnosis of cancer, heart disease, diabetes, and other illnesses can be much worse for folks living in rural communities, largely because of doctor shortages there.
New doctors tend to locate near the medical school where they completed their residency, the years after getting their MD, when they train in their chosen field. Medical schools are usually located in big cities.
That's not the case in Riverside County, California, thanks to a community-based medical school. The University of California, Riverside answered prayers when it opened 5 years ago because the shortage of doctors forced people to either go without medical care or drive all the way to Los Angeles for it.
There are some very real health risks. If you're having a stroke, you don't actually want to be 90 minutes away from your primary source of health care.
That's why the med school's primary purpose is to plant doctors in underserved Riverside County. The dean believes its new crop of 110 residents will go a long way towards meeting that goal.
Where you finish that tends to be predictive of where you will establish a practice and then subsequently be a practicing physician.
In addition to location, money is a strong factor in deciding where to put down roots.
Many new doctors feel the need to land high-paying jobs to pay off their crushing student loan debt, which often tops $200,000. They find higher salaries in big cities.
UC Riverside eliminates that burden by offering free tuition to med students who stay in the area after completing their training.
As of right now, I'm 100% committed to staying here. I'd like, ideally, to go to residency here, and then once graduating from residency, stay within this area.
After growing up in Riverside County, Madeline knows all too well the pain of not having access to medical care.
I really connect with a lot of this community. A lot of them are homeless or struggling below poverty line, have kind of on and off health insurance, which are all things that I've encountered when I was younger.
Unlike many medical schools, UC Riverside doesn't bother with a big, expensive teaching hospital. Residents here train at smaller healthcare facilities scattered across the county. Obstetrics resident Dr. Trina Mansour already sees her presence here making a difference.
There's patients that have had no prenatal care and they come in for delivery, and we have no idea what their medical background is, if they've ever had surgery before, if the baby has any anomalies.
Research shows most doctors would like to set up shop near family if possible. UCR Med's admission process takes advantage of that desire.
So recruiting from students from this region is an absolutely central pillar to what we're doing.
Dr. Douglas Grover, a Riverside native, graduated from UCR Med last year.
After my residency training, I plan to stay in the area and give back to the community where I grew up in.
As a resident in psychiatry, he feels good about providing mental health services here.
Things at home, families, broken relationships that really affect the younger kids. And at times they don't have anybody to go to talk to about it.
Another big difference at UC Riverside, students start seeing patients in year 1 rather than waiting until their 3rd year. These students even opened a free clinic for folks who otherwise might not have ever seen a doctor.
But every time I hear that, my heart warms a little bit because it's just one person that we're able to help a little bit more that hadn't had the help previously.
So while medical care disappears in many rural areas, Riverside County may have discovered the antidote. Open a medical school. admit locals with a heart for the underserved, and pay for their education, provided they don't take their talents elsewhere. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Still ahead, freedom from the press and where it stands in our nation today. Stay with us.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com. Want to be a part of a community that inspires your spiritual growth while winning prizes? The all-new MyCBN app. Connect with the community for prayer and encouragement. Track and set spiritual goals. Enjoy conversation starters with friends and family. And collect points to win prizes. The all-new MyCBN app. A great place to belong. Download the app at cbn.com/mobile. Grow, connect, have fun. The all-new MyCBN app.
Watch breaking news, in-depth exclusive stories and programs, from health to entertainment, you won't find anywhere else. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. Enjoy credible news reporting from around the world. Discover inspiring programs and stories of hope, all in one place, from a Christian perspective. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. Check your local listings or visit cbnnewschannel.com.
Come home to the sounds of Southern Gospel from CBN Radio. You'll enjoy a rich Southern blend of bluegrass, classic gospel, and Southern gospel favorites like the Gaithers, the Crab Family, and bluegrass sounds like Mountain Faith. So make yourself at home with the all-new CBN Southern Gospel, now available at cbnradio.com.
Freedom of the press is one of the cornerstones of our democracy. Our David Brody talks with radio and television host Mark Levin about what he believes is eroding.
When it comes to the media, in the age of Trump, we've become familiar with a couple of catchphrases.
They're fake news. You are the enemy of the people.
So what are we to make of this rhetoric? Is it exaggeration, or could something even more drastic be going on?
The mass media today is destroying freedom of the press. Not the government, not the president, the mass media.
In his new best-selling book, Unfreedom of the Press, popular radio and TV show host Mark Levin takes a deep dive into how the media became what and who they are today.
They've abandoned the patriot press that founded this country. They've abandoned seeking objective truth. Nobody's perfect in seeking objective truth, but you'll be more perfect if you give it a try every now and then. And so now we actually have journalists who are social activists, Democrats, progressives, who are pushing their agendas. That is destructive. That's not news.
It's well established that today's media leans left, but Levin takes the reader back to our founding. The Patriot Press started before the Revolutionary War, made up of a few dozen newspapers and many pamphlets spreading the message of freedom through the colonies.
But the battle was about government, not about fundamentally transforming society.
Then things began to change. Through the first half of the 1800s or so came what is known as the party press, where newspapers actually began aligning with political parties. At least then allegiances were known. That's where you get papers like the Arkansas Democrat Gazette or the Arizona Republic. Around the turn of the 20th century came a big change known as the Progressive Era. The media looked for new standards of neutrality, but Levin says a partisan party press developed, with social activism and progressive ideas at play beneath so-called objectivity. The result? A press playing political favorites.
The press protected FDR, the press protected John Kennedy, the press protected Lyndon Johnson. Matter of fact, they worked with them on their agenda and against their opponents. It's an amazing thing.
Examples? Well, Levin cites plenty, including the media looking the other way during JFK's affairs, or downplaying stories that would be front-page headlines or cable chyrons today.
Lyndon Johnson was so concerned about what his vice president, Hubert Humphrey, would say about the Vietnam War, because Humphrey was a dove. He had Humphrey's phones tapped.
Today, the media dealing with President Trump believes they're under attack like never before.
But it's really dangerous to demonize the media. It's dangerous to call the media lowlifes. It's dangerous to say that they're the enemy of the people.
But Levin wonders if they've read their own history.
One of the things most journalists are not is literate in our history. And so they make comments, they make statements that are absolutely off the wall.
A quick trip down memory lane shows presidents like John Adams and Woodrow Wilson using the law at the time to arrest journalists, shut down news organizations, and more.
Franklin Roosevelt, the so-called great Franklin Roosevelt, used the IRS against Mo Annenberg because he owned the Philadelphia Inquirer, which opposed the New Deal.
And yet today's media complains about their treatment by President Trump as unprecedented.
He hasn't lifted a finger against a single journalist or against a news organization. Trump is a unique and peculiar victim of what the press is doing. And I think the press wants to show that they don't get to lose, because it's an unfree press. It's an ideologically driven Democratic Party press.
Trump, the most persecuted president ever in this nation's history?
Certainly in my lifetime.
Modern era.
I think so. I mean, they went after Nixon pretty hard, but the truth is Trump hasn't done anything.
Levin says the media is looking the other way once again.
When you have the head of the FBI and the Justice Department, the top intelligence agencies under Obama, and the media trying to take out a candidate and using the police powers of the state, and then now trying to take out a president, what I call a silent coup, that's the news. That is a big deal. But when the news throws in with that activity, that's a big deal too.
So for those who feel the mass media has lost its way, what can be done? It won't be easy.
And they're not going to be deterred because their mission isn't news. Their mission isn't informing the people. Their mission is driving an agenda.
But Levin sees new technology and ways of communicating as part of the answer.
The great thing about freedom is it allows people to be creative, it allows people to come up with new ideas. That's what's going to happen.
And when it gets right down to it, Levin is a firm believer in the founders' mission, a nation founded and rooted in the principles of liberty and by a we the people mentality.
We need to understand what we're up against. We need to have this discussion. That's why I wrote this book. Right. That, I hope, is the new pamphlet for the new pamphleteers. Millions and millions of Americans, just like the colonists, who want to take their country back. We're going to have a free press. It'll be a vigorous free press, but I think the current mass media will die on the vine.
Levin's book is an attempt to prune it one page at a time. David Brody, CBN News, Washington.
Coming up, a review of the highly anticipated Toy Story 4 opening this weekend. Stay with us.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
The toys are back in town. Toy Story 4, that is expected to do great at the box office this weekend. Here's a family-friendly review for you from Plugged In Online.
In Toy Story 4, Sheriff Woody and his posse of fellow toys are now all residing in the toy box of a rambunctious little girl named Bonnie. And though Woody is no longer the favorite plaything in the heap, he's still the most loyal pull-string cowboy around. So after Bonnie creates a quirky little craft project turned toy named Forky, Woody takes it upon himself to show Forky the joys of being a child's best friend.
Who wants to go on a road trip?
Me! Not long after Forky's arrival, Bonnie takes the whole Toy Box gang off on a family road trip. And thanks to Forky's silly choices, that excursion becomes a far more action-filled adventure than anyone imagined.
Something happened to him.
Good old devoted Woody has to eventually admit that life, even a toy's life, can be filled with lots of unexpected potholes. And sometimes, a single choice can change everything.
Woody always coming to the rescue.
Bonnie needs Forky.
Woody, who needs a kid's room when you can have all of this?
Wow.
This fourth entry in the Toy Story saga stirs up the same magic that the first three were stitched together with.
On my way, Woody!
And along with its wonderful animation and funny characters, it packs in some thoughtful questions about family, love, devotion, and where we find our value in life. There are a few perilous bad dolly moments in the colorful antics, but it's all worthy of a Woody yeehaw! So I'll give Toy Story 4 a 4.5 out of 5 for family friendliness. For an in-depth review on this movie or anything else at your local box office, visit us at PluggedIn.com. Plugging you into the movies, I'm Cheryl Wilhelming for Focus on the Family's Plugged In Movie Review.
And time for your Friday Faithful. Today I leave you with this message. In an ever-changing world, God remains God, and He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. But remember this, being the same doesn't mean He is always doing things the same way. So don't limit how He moves, how He answers, and how He commands. With that word, make today a fabulous Friday and a wonderful weekend. That will do it for this first edition of CBN NewsWatch. Thank you for watching. You can always get more on the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com. You can also watch CBN News programs anytime on the CBN News channel. We'd love to know what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can email us, newswatch@cbn.com. And of course, you can reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hope you'll join us again right here next time. Goodbye, everybody, and God bless.